San Diego. We're back. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Claire McKee, and this is Real Talk La Jolla. We are here to bring you the business of life in America's finest city. And as always, this show is presented by our loyal partners at 5 Star Escrow and First American Title. I've got the dream team here today, I must say, and they're going to tell you how to achieve your very own American dream through financial fitness and having the right real estate professionals on your team. So here today to discuss that is Christian Griffin. He is a senior loan officer at Cornerstone Mortgage Group. Hi.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here.
You're welcome.
The lovely lady to my left is Kimberly Higgins. She's the vice president of Higgins Capital Management.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me as well.
Absolutely. And last but not least, we have Arlo, and I totally didn't ask you how to say your last name. Nugent?
Nugent. Yep.
Yes. Okay, it's not Nugent.
No, it's not. I've been called worse.
Like
I'm sure. So Arlo Nugent is here. He's a realtor with Keller Williams La Jolla. So they're going to take super good care of you all today, give you some really awesome information. But first, we're going to start off with a little warm-up. And so, of course, we're all professionals. We're all super busy. People like to say, oh my gosh, how do you find the balance between work and life? And I think that's an annoying question because balance is relative, right? So what I do want to know is what is kind of your method to decompress, to just unwind and let go, whether that's yoga, a glass of wine, whatever the case may be. And Kimberly, I'm going to start with you.
I am a big fan of white wine.
Yeah.
So gym, then white wine afterwards.
Gym, then white wine. Because, I mean, if you go to the gym, then you can have all the wine you want.
Exactly.
Right?
They kind of cancel each other out.
Balance.
It's perfect.
It's not before though, right?
Yeah.
No. Then you fall on the treadmill on your face.
You might have a real fun workout, though.
You wind up on, a David Letterman show or something.
Blooper reel.
Exactly.
Arlo, how do you unwind?
Ride my motorcycle.
Cool.
Race motorcycles, fly recreationally, so like to get in a plane, fly somewhere, go out to
Super cool.
Catalina, go out to Vegas for lunch, stuff like that.
Getting my pilot's license is on my
Very
bucket list.
cool.
So
You should do it.
Super cool.
You just have to start.
You have to do like X
next
amount
week.
of hours, like consecutively, right?
You do. Well, not consecutively, but you have to build in your logbook a certain amount of hours before you can take the test.
Gotcha.
But the first step, you just have to plan that first flight, like
Okay.
next week. Just call somebody and go.
I'm gonna
That's
call
it.
you.
Cool.
Be like, let's go, teach
Yeah.
me. What kind of bike do you ride?
KTM street bike.
So I was gonna say, isn't that like a
So race.
mix sort of like motocross bike or whatever?
No, it's totally crotch rocket racing on the track.
Oh.
Yeah.
Scary,
Yeah.
the good
Fun
stuff.
stuff,
Well, we know that he is an adrenaline junkie, clearly, Kim.
Yeah, thank
So,
you very much.
Looks like we have a live comment. I have horrible eyes, so Ty, can you tell me what the heck that says?
It's from Mike Serrano, and it's everyone tell me to rent a home and not to buy. What's so special about buying a home?
Good question. Should we flip a coin for who wants to take this one?
Make new friends. People, be in a different circle.
Yeah.
I don't know who's giving you that advice. I personally have grown so much of my net worth just by purchasing properties. You talk to a lot of very wealthy people, and they'll give you the same answer. There's so many reasons, from building equity to having an asset that can pay itself off and cash flow once you have renters in it. There's the write-offs, which you can speak more about. I mean, there are so many reasons. It's really interesting, though, that you would have a group of friends all saying that.
The
Yeah.
only time I've heard that, and it seemed reasonable, was like if you were gonna rent in Kearney Mesa versus like living in Kearney Mesa, and that might not be where you always want to live, and like that sort of thing.
Sure.
But that's really the only time I've ever heard like you might just want to consider the location versus.
Or if you're stationed here and you know you're going to be gone in a year or something, possibly then. But it's really interesting, to hear a lot of people say that.
I put my consumer hat on and I look, if I had the option to rent or purchase, just looking around to see what current rents are versus what your mortgage payment could be. I mean, it's like, would you rather pay for something you own, or would you rather pay for something that somebody else owns?
Right.
I mean, there's something to be said about being a homeowner. I mean, it's nice to have something that's yours.
Well, and you're going to pay somebody's mortgage, so it might as well be your own.
Exactly.
100%.
Absolutely.
And take advantage of the write-offs like you'd
Yeah,
mentioned.
excuse my French, but it's just like you're pissing money away by renting, and I know it, and it eats me alive.
Right.
But it's
Yeah.
it's the truth. Like if you can get into a home that's yours and pay your own mortgage and reap those benefits, should be
Right.
a no-brainer, Mike. So find new friends, Mike. We love you. Thanks for your question. We're
And in
gonna
different circles.
yeah. We're going to jump in with Arlo. Arlo, you have such an interesting background as well. We have some cool people here today. You've traveled to 30 plus countries in your lifetime.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense
That's
because
cool.
he's like 30 years old. But you actually also lived in South Korea for 3.5 years.
Moved here from South Korea.
That's wild. Tell me about that.
Yeah, it was interesting. I studied in England. Undergrad was in England. Studied there for a while. Studied international business after doing pre-med, but that's another story.
The world's most interesting man.
So did international business in England. Started a company that was operating in England between Germany and England. Then eventually went to get into Asia. Went to South Korea. Company did extremely well there. Didn't plan on being there that long, but the business kept me there, and then eventually just said, can't do it.
Yeah.
I can't have another winter in Korea.
Yeah.
So sold the business to an investor out of Chicago. He flew over, helped him with the whole onboarding process, and then it was a one-way ticket to San Diego. And
You didn't have a job lined up.
No. I had nothing lined up. I just said I think real estate would be cool. I want to do real estate. I want to do it somewhere where people pay to go on vacation. So I arrived on a Sunday morning, and Monday morning, that very next Monday, I was in my first real estate class, front and center, all my study stuff out, looked around, I'm like, there's like nobody here. 4 other people showed up, the instructor comes up, and he's like, okay, so you guys know the market just crashed, and well, people aren't doing so well in your industry. They're losing their houses. Are you sure you want to get into real estate? I'm like, yeah, I do.
Yeah, let's do it.
So it was an interesting time. It was literally probably 4 to 6 weeks after the market crashed is when I came here to a place I'd never been and wanted to pursue a dream.
But you dove
10
right
years
in.
ago this month.
Really?
So,
Super
yeah.
cool. So do you think that that's almost an advantage to your business by getting in the industry at that time?
I do, absolutely. So I learned the business from the inside out. So I've always had a good work ethic, but what I was told is when the market was doing this before, 11 years ago or so, people had no idea what they were doing. They didn't understand loans. They didn't understand the whole process. It was just writing an offer, putting it in, okay, cool, loans approved, let's do it. So in a down market, people ask questions. People read contracts. I have to be able to explain a lot of things about the loan, about how things work with appraisals. And then I got my broker's license, partnered up with some attorneys, and was a broker for the law firm in that down market. So really learned the contracts and negotiations, everything from the inside out. I guess the market that happened before I came were kind of close there again, minus the lending guidelines are still pretty strict.
No
but
job, no problem.
Fortunately, lending guidelines are still strict, but it's a crazy market. Properties, multiple offers, not lasting a day or two.
It's
nuts.
cutthroat right now.
Yeah.
And that's why you have to be pre-approved, because that house you saw, it's gone in hours. It's incredible.
And that offer you submitted, maybe list agent didn't present it. Maybe that property goes sold and there was an out-of-area agent that represented that buyer, if you know what I mean. There's a lot of shady stuff going on right now. And I was told that was happening before. And a lot of greed, quite frankly.
Wow.
Yeah.
Greed gets the best of people. So that brings me to a really good question. What should someone be looking for when they're seeking a realtor who they can trust and is going to have their best interest, really similar to your business?
Somebody with a background, with experience, somebody that will truly put their best interest working together with the lender to make sure that they get the right property, that the payments are affordable. Somebody who knows that area, somebody who knows contracts. In this fast market that we're in, I'm probably 85 to 90% on the listing side.
Okay.
Contracts come in, I'll kind of look at something, I'm like, wow, the person doesn't really understand what they mean by that, but hey, that's cool, that works out in our benefit. Then we get an escrow, and then after a contingency period, an angry buyer's agent calls and they're like, hey, what the heck is this? I'm like, that's the way you structured the contract. So knowing what type of risk you're exposing your clients to on the purchasing side, it comes with experience to understand all of those things. And then on the listing side, knowing how to protect your seller. I'm seeing some very creative things right now on purchase contracts. So just being able to go through those, pick those out, and counter those and structure contracts accordingly.
And I think
It's a
if
big
something
deal.
doesn't feel right, it probably isn't right, you know? So go with your gut and feel free to interview more than one person, right? I mean,
Well, I tell people, so the majority, like I said, majority of my business is listing, and I'll ask people, how many other agents are you interviewing? And I don't know if many agents do this, but I'll tell them, I want you to interview at least one other agent. And when they hire me, that makes me feel even better. Okay, they've seen their competition. They've seen my competition. They know they have options, and what that brings back is like when I had this seller in La Jolla, it was $8.2 million. I know he's not watching, but $8.2 million deal. And he interviewed me, and he interviewed the 5 big name agents that all of you know in La Jolla. So he interviewed them, and he interviewed me. And there were 2 rounds of interviews. Then it came down to someone else, and it came down to me. And as we got into this very, very complicated transaction, there were a lot of moving parts. He got pretty mouthy with me at one point. And I just told him, I said, look, here's the deal. You interviewed every top agent in town, and you selected me. And there's a reason. It's because I know what I'm doing, and this is how we're going to do it. And he really backed off big time. But telling them to interview other agents, letting them choose to work with
Right.
me gives me that credibility too, when I can go back to them and say, look, I know you think we should do it this way. You chose to work with me. This is how we do it. This is why.
I'm the trusted professional and I'm on your side.
Right.
Right.
And I'll protect you from yourself if I have to.
So you also have a small team though that you work with, and
I do.
I think that this is special because you did the big team thing and you
I had-
realized you wanted to be the point of contact. Right.
Big time, yeah. Had 10 agents working for me at one point in my Kearney Mesa office, the assistant, all that stuff. And it was a mess. It was just a mess, honestly. There were no systems in place. It just, running these people, working with buyers one week, working with sellers the next week. And I found, and others I think that have been in that position would agree with me, the people that do the least amount of business took up the most of my time.
Yep.
And I would dedicate my time to them because that's why they came to work for me. I promised them that relationship. So then I'd spend an hour going through, okay, well, you have to do this. If you structure this, these are potential outcomes. If they do this, then you react this way, you do this, blah, blah, blah. 2 weeks later, that agent finds himself in that position and they call me and they're like, oh my gosh, what do I do? And it's just like all that time, all that energy just out the window. So
Sure.
I set expectations, I held people accountable, trimmed the fat, just rebranded, and very, very strict with people that I bring on. It's a pretty lengthy interview process, but I have a very lean team now and very efficient, and we're doing volume-wise, transaction-wise, much more than ever in
Isn't
the past
that
with
interesting?
fewer people. Yeah, we're all on the same wavelength.
Well, and I think the awesome thing too is that you mentioned on the phone when we spoke, I'm sitting down for the interview. I'm trying to win this listing, right? And then I'm going to hand it off to someone else and they may never see me again, but you picked me. So
Right.
now they always know that you're going to be the one they're working
Yeah,
with.
exactly that. There are so many agents that have dialers. The dialers set the appointment. The guy goes in. He gets a listing contract signed for, I don't want to say any names, the Tom Green Group. And but Tom Green's not there, and that seller will never speak to Tom Green. But some other guy comes. The seller's not sure, who's this guy? Huh, okay, yeah, I read about this guy and all his ratings, blah, blah. Okay, you're this guy. Comes in, delivers all the lines, puts the pressure on, gets the listing signed, goes back, and now that contract's passed on to the next person. It's delegated to another team. And that seller interviewed someone working for this person's team, never met with this person, and now interviewed this
lost
person,
already.
signed with this, and then they're handed off to yet someone else. And then every time they call or email, a different person is responding. The left hand doesn't know what the right is
You
doing.
have to tell the story all over again, right?
Right, and it's not very efficient. So yes, you're right. I go, I interview, and I'm the point of contact. And I do have an assistant. I do delegate a lot of things that should be delegated to an assistant.
Sure.
But when it comes to negotiation, point of contact, request for repairs, all of those major contractual milestones, I'm the
Coming
point of
straight to you.
contact. Yeah.
I would come across that too. I mean,
All the
I always
time, right?
reach out
Yeah.
to the listing agent and introduce myself, just because it's always nice to have that open communication line.
From the beginning, absolutely.
And either A, you can never get a hold of them, and this isn't as common. I do have it happen though, and it's kind of odd to me. But reach out, and if I'm lucky enough to get a hold of them,
They don't
usually
answer
don't
their
want
phone.
They don't want to talk
Yeah.
to me. They're like, you need to talk to my TC or so and so.
And you're such an integral part, because
Yeah.
what happens is
Yeah.
once you get to day 15, 16, and if things aren't going smoothly, then guess what? That list agent's like, get the lender on the phone.
Right.
Oh, you mean that guy you didn't take his calls in
Right.
return?
Right.
Yeah.
So I
it's
just never
teamwork.
understood that. It's always nice to talk to somebody that's got their hands dirty in the file.
Yeah, need to be. Yeah, that's the way it should be. Absolutely. Yep.
Trusted advisors right here taking care of you. And we have another awesome question from
cool.
James Russell. He says, is it smart to purchase a 400K home that has a rental attached to it that you can get $1,000 a month in rent from? What do you think about that, guys?
Okay, so let's see. Is it
Can you
smart to
read that?
purchase a home for 400K? Okay, so 1,000 is that's the rent.
It sounds
That's
like
the
that's
total
what they're
rent
bringing
amount.
in for
It's,
the
it's
rent.
bringing in 1,000 a month, and it's attached to a rental. So, I mean, I would ask a couple of questions. That rental it's attached to, are there issues? Have those tenants been in place for several years? Or is there a lot of turnover? Is there noise that comes from that? And then what else? Let's look at that a little bit closer. I mean, ideally, you would buy both. If that's a duplex and you can get both,
Yeah,
that would be a good way to go.
Right.
We don't see a ton of those in San Diego, but
A rental attached almost makes me think like a granny flat or something. I
I was
don't
kind
know.
of thinking
Yeah.
that, like maybe a little granny flat in the back.
if it's a granny
I
flat,
mean, what-
yeah,
maybe if you got to ask if it's permitted, what's going to be the resale. I mean,
yeah,
if you're using it for qualifying purposes, we need to make sure that it's been permitted and it's going
Is-
to work for the loan.
and is parking
it's
shared?
zoned for
Yeah.
it. So,
correct zoning.
but I mean, if you can get $1,000 without,
Yeah,
if you can
if you
find
can
that, and
buy-
get
So
1,000
the
more-
numbers make sense.
the
if
numbers
it's-
make sense. If you're buying in at 400K and you're cash flowing 1,000 after everything, that makes sense all day long. Even
Absolutely.
if you have 2 months vacancy rate, you're, yeah, do it.
I look at back when I was younger. I mean, now I've got 3 kids and a wife and 2 dogs, and there's no way I could, buy a property and have a granny flat renting it out.
Yeah.
But when I was younger, shoot, I would take that all day long. I mean, make a little extra cash, maybe eventually move on and leave that property and get 2 units, 2 rental.
Totally.
But buying at 400, cash flow of 1,000, that's very strong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Kim, in regards to a down payment, people can borrow against their 401ks. Is that right?
You can take loans out of your 401k. You cannot take loans out of IRAs, but you can do a first-time home purchase of $10,000 that you can take out.
Okay, so if that seems overwhelming, coming up with the down payment, and you do have that 401k, you might be someone they want to talk to.
Yeah, absolutely. But you need to be, once again, financially savvy and know that you can pay this mortgage off and be aware that you have to repay 401k loans in about 5 years.
Oh, you see what James
So
said?
yeah, it's a house with a modified garage into a studio apartment. That's interesting. Like the privacy, the separation, having a modified garage probably is not on the up and up as far as permits and counting that as livable space. I'd really want to know more about this situation just on a personal side. The numbers, it makes sense, but is that person staying home, smoking pot all day, playing video games, making a lot of noise? Or is it an elderly lady that's been there for 10 years and always pays on time? Numbers-wise, it makes sense.
The other thing too, you want to consider on the lending side, if it's an unpermitted structure, the appraiser is going to call it out. Underwriter is not going to sign off on the fact if there's, a heating unit in there. There are conversions that are done that will pass and you can lend against as long as it's done in a
Workmanship manner.
Exactly,
Yeah.
workmanship manner. But typically, if there's a kitchenette in there or any gas lines or heating source, that's a no-no.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. Is it up to code? Because
Right.
if you just like, oh yeah, I'll convert this,
Is there
no
a bathroom
problem.
in there? What's going
Exactly.
on? Yeah.
So those are things you want to consider.
But then if fair market value is 500 and you're getting it for 400 and cash flowing 1,000, I would still do that. And if anything, then do an unlawful detainer action, kick the tenant out, modify that property, sell it. I mean, seriously.
Done deal.
Yeah,
Good to go.
definitely. So depending on what fair market value is too, yeah, if you're getting a deal on it, sure.
Super awesome. Good questions. Thanks for chiming in, James. Really appreciate that. Hope we answered your question too. Arlo, I'm going to come back to you. Tell me, what's your why? Why do you do real estate?
It gives me the ability to work harder and to make more money. And it allows me the freedom to travel as much as I do, to spend time with my family, to have the hobbies that I do. I have some pretty crazy hobbies, some that I haven't mentioned, but it'll
Talk about those off there.
But I had a job right out of college where I would show up early. I would never take a break. Like the guy next to me was taking every smoking break that the law would permit. He would show up 5 minutes late, an hour before quitting time, just like, okay, when can I clock out? And just sitting around. And he was making the same amount of money that I was. So to me, it's always been important to get into something to where if I work harder, then I'm rewarded. And real estate allows that. Real estate allows me to travel a lot, work remotely, and do the things that I want. So that's always been my driving force.
Awesome. Well, if you want to work with Arlo Nugent, he's the realtor with Keller Williams La Jolla. I'm going to come back to you.
Okay.
We've given our listeners so much information today, lots of great advice. So if they're going to take away one golden nugget from you, what's the golden nugget?
Really investigate who you're going to work with as far as a lender. I'm constantly battling against the lowest rate. I want the lowest rate.
1-800-mortgage.com, right?
Exactly. Typically, I mean, when you think of something that's as cheap as you can get, it's usually not the best. So it kind of goes into the lending world. You know, I always put it this way: your house is permanent, your loan is temporary. So get in the house, leverage yourself, interview a lender, ask them questions, and cross-examine it. Google's your best friend.
Totally. Awesome. Great advice. Arlo, what's your takeaway? What's the nugget you want people to remember?
Yeah, absolutely. Hit the nail on the head. I really like what you just said about the home being permanent and the loan not. I think that's really clever. And ultimately, just in this market, yes, we're super high prices right now. We've seen double-digit appreciation. We're seeing, a lot of microeconomic indicators that we may be at the top, macroeconomic possibly, but it's not the real estate's fault. And what that means is while we have these dips time over time, there's a 4% appreciation going back to like 1930. So real estate is a great investment vehicle. Work with people that you trust, that have your best needs at hand, and
You'll be smooth sailing. Kimberly, what do you have? What's your takeaway?
Do not be afraid of the stock market, and invest. There's so much you can do now aside from individual stocks. There's bonds, ETFs, CDs. There's all kinds of investment vehicles that
Lots
you
of
should.
acronyms.
Yes. Oh, right. I know. It's just like alphabet soup. But yeah, don't be afraid. Just invest in your future. It sounds so corny, but it really is true.
It's real.
And you will get the returns. You will. Just don't be afraid. Don't be terrified into inaction.
Yeah, absolutely. Analysis paralysis, right? Well, I had a lot of fun today. Thank you all so
Likewise.
much for being
Yeah,
here.
thanks.
Really appreciate it. This is Real Talk La Jolla coming to you from Smarter San Diego Studios every Wednesday. I'm Claire McKee, bringing you the business of life in America's finest city. Go love everyone, and we'll see you next time. Thanks again.